I'm glad everybody's here because we're hoping that this is the first of many live World War II story share segments that we can do. I'm very excited to do this with Ryan Fairfield and the other one. So no, this ought to be a fun. And can I just say real quick? I do think of this as an extension of what you guys already do. I mean, like I said, I sit here at a desk and I read books and whatever, but you guys talk to actual participants, and that's amazing. And preserving those stories, priceless. That maybe these stories won't end up in the movies, they won't end up in books, but the point is, you guys have got these recorded forever, and I can't think of no greater way to honor the greatest generation.
I appreciate you saying that. So
Hmm.
Ryan and I have been. I'm Tony Lupo. That's the other
The other one,
person that
yeah.
Ray's referring to. For those who may
Sorry,
not know,
sorry.
Ryan and I have been collecting oral histories as volunteers for the Library of Congress since 2001 for a long time. And one of the things that we decided to do about 3 or 4 years ago is start our own podcast where we feature clips from these veterans and from other people that we've met along the way. And we also do special projects with Ray, who's got this gargantuan podcast. For those on the line who may not know, I think it's the most listened to World War II history podcast in the world, which is pretty awesome. So we're
Actually,
really
it's the most tolerated. Go
the
ahead.
most
No, go ahead. Sorry.
fair enough, most
Yeah.
tolerated. So one of the things that both of our podcasts end up getting is letters from people or emails that say, hey, I had a chance to listen to your podcast, and I just want to share a story about my family, about someone, usually a grandfather, whomever, that did something that they want to share with us. And we thought, you know what? Why can't we start having these type of meetings, these type of Zoom meetings, where our collective audiences can call in and share these stories, and we can learn about them. And we're recording this right now, so this will be PG-13.
Mhm.
And being able to, to be able, what the plan is we're going to take excerpts from this, and we're going to, share it on our podcast more widely, and hopefully get more people to call in and be interested in this.
Yeah.
So we also have a lot of help doing this. This is the first time. We've only been marketing this for about a month. We're not sure what we're doing, but we have some help. So Ryan, do you want to introduce some of our special guests?
So if anyone has been, in the sphere of listening to World War II history podcasts, the Veterans Breakfast Club is at the very top of being not only a great podcast, but they do these live online events all the time, weekly, a couple times a week. I think there's one maybe even going on tonight, and Shaun's here with us. So Shaun is typically the moderator for all of their online events, and we've had Shaun on our podcast before as a guest co-host when we talked about Gerard Daly, who was a fellow who was in the cavalry during World War II, and he actually witnessed the Japanese that submarine that shelled the West Coast early in the war in like February of 42. So Shaun was able to come on and provide some insight on a number of things that Mr. Daly had witnessed and everything. But we want to thank Shaun, obviously, for coming on here, and he's doing all the background duties right now, admitting people into to the room and everything. But we've got a lot of people we need to thank. There's too many to thank, really. But I guess we could just kind of go from there. Yeah. And Shaun's the number one guy. The legal disclaimers, though, to be up front, we're, like Tony said, we're going to use these videos, so what we're going to be doing is, if you're okay with it, your likeness may be like included in like a montage we might make, or something we'll put on our Facebook page or our YouTube page. If we say anything offensive, we apologize. We don't mean it. Well, I don't mean it. Tony probably means it, but
I mean it.
And Ray don't care. He's just here to hang on.
He doesn't even know it's offensive. He's oblivious.
What's offensive mean?
So anyway, we're just here to have fun tonight. Have some good conversations, talk to you guys. And you know what? If you don't have a short story you want to share, but you just want to jump in and talk and discuss some topics, by all means, hit that raise your hand button, the raise hand button down at the bottom. And that way it lets Shaun know that you want to have something to say or a comment you want to make. And if you need to be unmuted for any reason, if you don't have that control, then we can do that. So,
but I think we have someone who has already reached out to us who has offered to share her story about her family, which I think is really compelling, and that would be Gina. Gina, would you be brave enough to share with the rest of us while being recorded? No pressure. That don't worry, we'll do the editing. If anything slips up, we're not gonna.
Please.
Don't feel any pressure. But you had a really interesting story. You've been reaching out to us a couple of times via email. I sure would like to hear, or we would, more about kind of your journey with learning more about I believe your grandfather, correct?
Yes. So I'm the granddaughter of a World War II soldier who was killed in World War II. He was in the 80th Division, 317th Infantry. I've always been very intrigued by his death and like what happened around it, and grew up with like his letters in my home and read them like now and then. And they just seemed like such sacred pieces of him, like of history. And it was just always just very, very moving. So fast forward to like my 20s, and I started really reading them like deeply and in chronological order. And I just became like, again, very, very interested in his life, his death, details and everything. So I always had it on my bucket list to visit his grave in Lorraine American Cemetery. He's buried in St. Avold at Lorraine. And that finally happened last year, and it was incredible. Like I couldn't even believe it was finally happening, like after decades of envisioning that and visiting him. I always say like visiting him because he didn't get to come home. So I just always wanted to go to him, and always just felt, sounds weird, like so bad for him. I'm a very sentimental, like empathetic person, and I just always like envisioned what he went through and how he died, and wondered about all the details. So
can you tell us a little bit about what action he was involved with, and like the location, and what you know about his fighting and how he died?
yeah, well, he was they were moving east of Many, the little village of Many,
This is
which
in
is
France.
west of Saint Avold.
Okay.
Would you say?
This is in
Yeah.
France.
Yes, in
Obviously.
France, sorry.
Okay.
And the village is very tiny. It's only like 300 people, but he was killed just east of there when with heavy artillery, shrapnel hit him in the torso, supposedly. Well, it did, but I'm just saying, in all my research, I honestly keep finding like all these little gems, and I'm still researching. Like I'm like, because of me reaching out to you guys, I'm just still researching, finding things, digging. There's just always more to know and more pieces to put together. And when I say that, like he got shrapnel, hit with shrapnel in the torso, and when he died from that, and I say finding more information still to this day, because I recently found like the little paragraph that my mom has that describes in detail like the amount of cc's of blood he received, because he did not die immediately. Like very, very detailed about his wounds. And in that description, it said something about a cranial, injury. And I wish I had brought that with me tonight and I could have read it. Anyway, I looked up like all the verbiage in that paragraph. And in the end, they did a spinal tap on him post mortem. And they did that to prove like how he died. And technically, he died from a concussion to the head, which we've never, ever, ever said that. We've always said he died from shrapnel wounds. The spinal tap, yes. If it shows blood in there, then it proves that there's a brain injury. And anyway, right. So I was reading that at my parents' house recently, and I looked it all up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like he technically died from a concussion, but we've always said shrapnel to the torso. So, which is in his IDPF too. But yeah, so there's just always information out there to find. It's just incredible.
What's your grandpa's full name?
It's Otis W. Bryant.
Oh, Otis Bryant. Okay.
Yes. And that's why I'm talking about him, because I just like you guys want to keep these stories alive. And I'm just like, I thought like after my trip last year that my research and like interest would kind of fade a little bit, but it has grown like 100 times. Like
we've never heard someone say after I've been over there, it's like, it doesn't matter anymore. It kind of, it kind of definitely amplifies that. And
Yeah.
I guess I just have a couple of questions, and I'd like to hear you talk more about that.
Yeah, I wrote
Perfect.
that. Yeah.
Look at
Perfect.
that.
Attaboy, Shaun. That's perfect.
Wow, you did your research.
Sean's fast.
So, how many sons or daughters did Otis have?
So he just had 2 children. My uncle was 3 when he was killed, and my mom was 5 months when he was killed. Um, Ironically, I wrote this story for the War Horse because again, I've just been so immersed in everything, and I love writing. And I just like reached out to the War Horse and wrote this. They accepted it. We edited back and forth, and they did that. And an interesting part about that story that you pulled up is that picture of that house that that's my grandma holding my mom. That house she's standing in front of. And this is like the coolest part about my story, I think.
Mhm.
I grew up in that same house. I was the 4th generation to grow up in that house. So my mother grew up there. Marcella, my grandma, who's standing in that picture, grew up there, and her parents built that house. So 4 generations lived in that home, including me. And I still visit that house to this day. My mom is 82 and she still lives there.
Oh,
And it is like this treasure trove of like everything that happened back then. Like, and again, because I'm so deep, every time I visit them, I think about the memories there. I think about what happened, the grief that happened there, like every single generation that lived there. Like, I just still think about them when I'm walking through that house all the time. And this is really nuts. My dad, who's kept some like literally like historical artifacts about my grandpa, just like tucked away, he'll bring something out now and then. Like just last time I was home, he brought out the little tiny box. This is like mind blowing. He's never showed us this. And it's my mom's dad who was killed. But my dad, I think, is just like being protective, and he tucked it away like under the attic door, or whatever, behind the door to like protect things. Anyway, last time I was home, he brought out this little box and had all the artifacts that were sent home that were on his person.
His personal effects.
And one of them was a little tiny cross, and it was old, of course, as can be. And just me, because I've always studied his letters so much, I'm like, oh my God, that is the cross that was in his pocket. Like 90% sure that's the cross that was in his pocket. And he probably held on to that and prayed so hard on that cross. And so I just held it. This was just like a month ago. I just held it like, because I'm so sentimental and just felt so connected to it.
So Gina, I know in some of the email correspondence you and I have had, your hometown is Effingham, Illinois. Is that right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And you just went back around Memorial Day to you were going to give a speech to a smaller group, but you got sucked into doing a speech for a much bigger group, right?
I did.
Yeah. So tell us how that went, and how prepared you were for that,
Well, I was prepared for the first one. Was at our local county museum, and they asked me to do like a little lecture. They have a lecture series every other week. And so she asked me to tie my story in with Memorial Day. So I gave that speech at the museum on Thursday night. 75 people showed up. Like they had to add chairs, and I was nervous, but I just kept telling myself, this is for my grandpa. This is just to keep his story alive, and all the other soldiers who gave their life, just to keep talking about him. So that's why I did that. And it's funny because I have, certain people that are just like, why is she doing that? They're probably like, why is Gina doing this? But it's just for my grandpa. It's everything for him, what he gave up and what he did. And then I was supposed to give a speech at a small cemetery on Monday. And the quartermaster of the VFW called me Sunday night at 10 p.m. and said that his speaker for the large cemetery backed out on him. And he said, could you do the large cemetery instead? And I was like, oh my gosh.
Wow.
Well, I think you're on their speaker rotation schedule now.
Yeah.
I mean,
you know what? By that point, I was like, I think everybody is sick of Gina Wolf right now. Because in my hometown, like I was actually on the front page of the newspaper too, like a whole story on the front page. And they're probably like, okay, enough already.
He would be proud.
I think what's interesting, Gina, is Ryan and I often interview the veterans. We don't interview the people who didn't have that veteran come home.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, so your story, when you were sharing it with Ryan and I, really resonated with us because, a lot of times we're sitting across from an 85-year-old guy or a woman who came back. And sometimes they may have been a bit diminished by it, wounded, maybe having some PTSD. So I guess the question I have for you is how young were you when you realized, how big of a hole did his death leave in the family? And when did you realize that there was this person in your life that was supposed to be there and they're not there anymore? And how did that affect you?
Hope I don't get emotional because I still do. Even though, yeah, it's weird because I never knew him and my mom never knew him either. But I mean, I always knew about him, probably from pictures in the house. And I always remember in high school when they pulled in that big old TV on the cart to watch like a World War II movie, black and white movie on the cart. I just always remember like that was hard for me. Like it was hard for me to even watch, like because and then I told myself, I think in my head for years, even into my 20s, like I can never watch a World War II movie. I can't. And fast forward and I'm doing all of this. Now I can watch anything and I want to. Like I want to know what people went through. I want to see it. And I've watched some very graphic things in the last couple of years. And I just do it because I truly want to be empathetic to what people went through and I want to know everything I can. But yeah, back in high school, it was just like a presence. And my mom like talked about it, but when she did, it was in a very sort of like woe is me kind of way. I think she was always very bitter. And I know she always talked about Otis's mother. Of course, anybody would not get over losing a child, but she always talked about Otis's mother, how she just could not accept it and could not get over it. And my question always is like my grandmother, my mom's mom, how did she handle it? Like I want to hear more stories of her strength and all this. And that's kind of sadly the missing piece. Like we don't have a lot of stories about her grief. And we know she was a strong woman, of course, like she worked and she moved back in with her parents at that house, that picture of that house, once he was killed. And she went to work and like my great grandma actually would have watched my mom when they were little so that my grandmother could go to work. And she just got on with life. And like, I know I'm very proud of her too for what she had to go through and what she did.
So Gina, I think your grandfather was killed in November of 1944. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you went back. You said just last year, and you had a great experience meeting up with some of the locals who became tour guides or were guides for you, right? And they were with an organization. Is that correct?
Yes. In my research before my trip, I found the Thanks GIs Association, and what they do is they do is keep the memories alive of the soldiers who died for them in the Lorraine region. And the president is Elizabeth Gazzo, Gozzo, and Alan is her husband. And so they do this together. They've been doing it for close to 30 years, I think. And literally they give up so much of their time. They plan memorials, they plan ceremonies, they have built monuments. When I was there, they took me to this huge Moselle River crossing monument that he helped build. Elizabeth has had a little bit of some health issues. So Alon is the one that took me on the tour last year and his other historian friend, Didier. And so those two men took me and my family from the cemetery. We met them at the cemetery at St. Avold and then worked our way west. So we were literally like going to the last villages that my grandpa was in. The very first stop was, because it was like where he was killed, was the very first stop was the field where he was killed in. So we're following Alon and Didier in the car. And then we pull over and yeah, he's like, we are 90% sure with our studies of his physicians that this is the field that he was killed in. So that's something I always wanted to see. Like,
how did you feel when you were in that field?
It was just surreal. I feel like I was in a dream, seriously. This sounds weird. And when I say this in my head, I almost want to cry. I feel like I was in my imagination, like my whole life. I have this imagination of him and how he died. And it was like, oh my God, I'm in that dream. I'm in that mindset. Sorry, I'm getting crying.
No,
I'm getting misty-eyed too.
You talk about being sentimental. I think people have a sense of history. People on this phone call right now who care about these things, they are sentimental because they're trying to understand or grasp or recreate the conditions for whatever that thing was that was historic to them.
Yeah.
And so that's why I wanted to ask you that, because I think I would argue, you were there, I don't know, so I'm saying this, but you tell me if I'm wrong, that it probably went from a lot of abstract ideas in your mind about what he would have saw or experienced, and then you're standing there looking at the field, looking at the trees, looking at the villages. I mean, like you said, I think surreal is a great word that you used for it.
Yeah. It was, yeah, it was like indescribable. There were even like no words. Like I think I just stood there and I didn't even say anything. Went along, kind of went like this, this is the field. And I was just speechless. Like I truly was. Um, and when we got into the village of Many, well, first of all, they surprised us and had us meet the mayor. They like walked us into the town hall, and the mayor and his city manager were standing there. So they received us as like their special guests. So that was very, very moving to meet them. And that was neat as can be. And then we walked out, and I'm not kidding, this little village, it looked like it hasn't even changed since World War II.
Probably hasn't.
Yeah, those like buildings, is it concrete that they're made of, or like stucco, or
all the stone buildings with stucco.
yeah, they're like
over
stone
them.
buildings. There were bullets everywhere.
Yep.
Still. And I walked up to one, and just me being me, because I have to like touch and feel, and again I have to experience everything. So I was touching one of the holes in the bullet, and DDA walked up to it, and he kind of handed it to me. That was the most speechless moment I've ever had in my life. I stood there and my mouth literally dropped.
So Gina, you dropped off right when you were describing putting your hand on the bullet. So did you pull a bullet out of the wall?
DDA did, the man with me. He's the one that, like, after I touched it, he reached in and pulled it out. I just remember like my mouth very, very, very naturally just fell open, and I literally said, "What?" Like, and the irony is like, here I am holding this, the granddaughter, 81 years later, of someone who this bullet was probably shot towards. And here I am like holding this. Like, who would have thought, like, what crazy full circle moment. I don't even know what you would call that moment, but for me to be holding that bullet in that street, in that spot. And then, I don't know, I wrote this somewhere in some article, maybe it was in my local paper, but it started to rain. This is like an emotional thing too. It started to rain right after that moment. And so we started running back to the car from that spot where I was holding the bullet. And as I was running, I was thinking to myself, my grandpa was running in this street. He was like literally running from things and from bullets and artillery shells. And here I am running in the street, like the same street.
I was going to say a visceral experience combined with time travel all in one visit. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, now that we made you cry, Gina, we're going to give you a bit of a break. I'm going to ask if there's any volunteers who would like to share. I'm going to call on some people. We don't get some volunteers. There's some people on this phone call that I want to hear about. Beth? Okay.
I'll go next. Beth. Well, my dad was on the Big E.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
He was 19 years old. He had gone through 1 year of college and enlisted that following summer. And so the Big E was back in Bremerton, I believe, in 43. So he was 19 when he went on board. The stories we heard as kids, well, we always celebrated February 22nd every single year, because February 22nd was when he was released from service.
Oh,
okay.
1946, of course, after the war was over. So it was like his birthday again. It was a big cake. It was a huge celebration because that was his getting out of the Navy day.
Wow.
That was the kind of personality my parents had.
Yeah.
But think about this. So you were having this celebration based on his release from the service in 1946, and he was in 1943. There was a lot of bad things going on then. What was he doing on the Big E? What was his role?
He was a radar man.
Okay.
And he always put it as he was a radar man first class. And
Just so everybody knows.
He died a long time ago of cancer in 85. So, I knew him as a young adult, and then he died. But He was not a braggadocio man at all. In fact, we were very discouraged from being braggart kids. So probably about 10 years ago, I had done some digging into like ancestry and that kind of stuff. And they had a free day to look up stuff. And that's how I learned you could actually get their archived from the Naval Archives, his file.
Yep.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so I went ahead and did that because, there were a few stories we heard as kids. When he joined the Navy, it was the only time he knew that there were other parts to the chicken besides a gizzard and necks. That was something he always said. It's like, I never even knew there was, other parts because they were poor. He was a poor kid.
Good for him.
And another story he would tell was about a young sailor that was like supposed to be parking a Jeep on the deck, and he backed up and off of the ship.
Oh my gosh.
And I remember just saying, and I was probably a kid of like maybe under 10, and I'm like, did they stop? Did they go back? And it was like, honey, you can't stop.
Yeah.
Oh no.
An aircraft carrier. He's gone. And then also, we heard some stories about the suicide.
Kamikaze.
Kamikazes.
Thank you.
Can you tell us his name real quick?
Oh, I'm sorry. Sure. Roy Lidstrom. And so he saved a piece of a wing, and I found it in his scrapbook, and he has it labeled Judy Wingtip.
Oh, Japanese plane.
Following suicider near mess, April 11/45.
Wow.
And
that would have been a Judy dive bomber.
Judy.
That was during Okinawa.
That was a nickname, I guess, of the ships. Those.
Yeah, they had like the zeros and the vowels.
There was the Kates and the Bettys and all that stuff.
Exactly. And so then I got his file, and I'm going through this file, and the first thing I notice is he's been called to the captain's mast, which I guess is a violation. And his violation was sunbathing.
Yeah. What?
And he had, and as a radar man, obviously he had to come out of the hole and go up on top to sunbathe. So obviously he got caught, and his penalty was 5 hours of extra duty, which who cares? You're
what else are you gonna do, right?
It was worth probably sunbathing. But the irony there is he actually died of skin cancer. That was what he died of. He was an outdoor guy. He was a farmer.
Apparently, he wanted to take his shirt off and get a little vitamin D.
Which is another thing that with the money that was sent back to his grandparents, or to my grandparents, his parents, they actually bought a farm. But anyway, so after that, then the next thing I find in his file is, because we also, and I think this came from Mom, I don't think I ever heard this from Dad, but that Dad had wanted to be a pilot. And he was not eligible to because he had high blood pressure. Mm-hmm. But in his file, I find where he took the flight aptitude test, and the ACT, which I think is like a physical part of it, he got a B on. But on the MCT, which was more like math and physics and that kind of stuff, he got a D. So he did not pass.
I don't think he expected that family members would end up kind of digging through his past history records like this, but
and then I come to the part of how he got his first class rating.
All right.
And I'll just kind of read it to you. He got a meritorious conduct, and it was during the final, the Tommy Z is what they called it. But that was kind of a misnomer. It was a suicide on May 14th of 45. Oh. And they thought that was the pilot's name was Tommy Z, but they got that wrong. His name was like Tomiyasi or something like that. They thought they'd found some identification on him, but that wasn't true. It's been a while since I read that part of the story, so I don't really know who the pilot was. But anyway, the above named man manned the ship's information circuit on the 14th of May, 45, during an enemy suicide attack on the task group. His duty was to pass evaluated information to flag plot, bridge, and other control stations. His excellent work in passing up to the minute clear and concise information to these stations brought praise from the Chief of Staff and Force Fighter Director in Combat Information Center. The task he performed normally was handled by an officer. So I'm thinking because the bomber he actually landed in the elevator and went down through the
Oh my
elevator,
God.
and that was near the officers' quarters. So I'm sure some of the deaths were officers. So obviously they didn't have an officer doing that. And he was placed there because of a shortage of officer personnel. Okay, so that makes sense. His ability to fulfill this task, his clear thinking and coolness were in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service. In view of the above, it's recommended that the above named man be advanced to the rating of Radar Man First Class, U.S. Navy R. I don't know what that is, but for meritorious conduct.
So, but really quick, so think about his role in the ship. He would have been in the CIC, the Combat Information Center. He would have had being in the radar, a play-by-play front seat to all the things that were going on in terms of incoming aircraft, outgoing aircraft, kamikazes coming in. How open?
Yeah.
Yeah, how open was he with telling you stories about that? Did you guys okay?
That's just it. None of us heard that. There are 6 kids, or there were. My oldest brother passed last year. None of us, because as soon as I got this, I'm like, did you guys hear this? Have anyone ever heard this story?
Yeah.
Never.
Yep.
No one heard a word about this.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the things that makes this generation so amazing. They did the job. They came home. They got like your the Gina, her mother. You got on with your lives. It was a thing we had to do because it was forced upon us, and you move on. And the other thing, as far as his promotion to first class, I mean, if you're a commander or command and control, you need the minimum amount of information as fast as you can get it, so you can make decisions. And it sounds like he did that excellently, and the officer or whoever was able to make decisions based on that.
Yeah.
And that's why the ship is still there.
And he looked great with the tan too at the same time.
So well, at 19, we all look great with the tan. But
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I loved his description because he was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy, and the description was that his complexion was ruddy, and I'm like, yep, he was ruddy, all right, because he was outside all the time.
That's funny.
So the other thing is, you mentioned the records. We get a lot of people saying, and this is going to go to Len. I'm going to pick on him in a minute. A lot of people, and this part isn't Len, will say, oh, they had this big fire in St. Louis, and there's no point getting my records and all that. We had someone on our podcast named Myra Miller who does a lot of this sort of research for families, friends.
Footsteps Researchers is the name of it.
Exactly. Footsteps Research is the name of it. And she said that there is a lot of redundant information that was outside of St. Louis in places like Washington, D.C. or Kansas City that is available, and that more often than not, when people reach out to her, she's able to pull in things that they didn't know existed. So what was your experience in trying to get records for your father? How difficult was that? Did you go through St. Louis? What did that look like?
Yeah, it looks like it came from St. Louis. I gathered up everything. I gathered up his death certificate, his birth certificate, my birth certificate to prove he was my dad and everything. And what they got back to me with was, hey, you didn't need to do that. It's this many years past. None of that stuff is
public information. Yeah.
Yeah. And several things are marked restricted, like this meritorious conduct thing was marked restricted. And I don't know if it was restricted just at the time. It didn't give locations or anything. I didn't understand why it would be restricted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I got my grandfather's records, who was in the Navy, not on the Mighty E. He was on the Colorado, and then later which was a battleship, and then later he was on a Tomahawk, an oiler, which was terrible. He was on a floating bomb. And I had the same experience you did, where I had a chance to read some things that I did not hear my grandpa tell his family. Things like after their very first major action in Tarawa, where they're doing support for the landing, their ship got hit by counter battery fire from the island. And when he got back to Pearl, he was like, hey, I got this letter from my parents back in Flint, Michigan, and they need me back home on the farm. I think I'm done here now. And they're like, well, you know what, Phil, you enlisted before the war and you got some points. We're going to transfer you. And he's like, all right, this is great. And then they put him on a floating bomb. They put him on a tanker. So
Oh,
it's
wow.
interesting how you can kind of look underneath the hood a little bit like you did. It's like, oh
Yeah.
man, he got in trouble for this and he did this and he got tested for that.
But that
Um,
makes it all the more real,
it
and I think a
does.
lot more exciting. It adds a lot of spice to the story as a whole, and how
Yes.
you remember the person.
You get
I
to see
mean,
the person. You get to see the person as a
exactly.
child. Because you don't ask questions about your parents, when
Right.
you're a teenager. You don't ask,
Yeah.
well,
They're your parents.
Yeah.
exactly.
Did you get in trouble? Yeah. Oh well, yeah. It was one time I was
Oh,
canning.
that's the good one right there.
Yeah.
It's like, actually, you did get in trouble quite a bit.
Yeah. Wow.
So through everything that, well, first off, I have a couple questions before I start picking on other people.
Okay.
One, what is your why do you think you got so interested in trying to understand, what he did?
That's a great question. I think it's because I lost him so soon. I was always into history, and like Gina mentioned, the film carts coming in, and you're like, we watched that whole series of World at War. I was in high school in the 70s, and there was this whole series of the World at War. Um, and that really sparked my interest. I mean, I'm sure the teacher just wanted to phase out over here while we watched this. Like, oh my God, because I mean, it showed everything. It showed the European concentration camps and everything. It was just, so that's where I was sparked, was in high school. But then, I lost my dad within 10 years of that. So I think it was just because I didn't get to know him in old age. You just, when he has more time to tell stories. I don't know if he ever would have told that, though. I
Good
don't know
point.
if he would have or not, because he was very, I mean, he involved himself in a lot of things, but he was very, I don't want to say private, just quiet about accomplishments. I mean, we were never to brag, never to brag. That
Yeah,
was the number one rule as kids, his
I think
kids.
Gina said the same thing. So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
and my last question, Ryan and Ray may have some others, is from researching more about his experiences during the war and whatnot. What was the one, what was the one thing? I mean, you already told us. What was the one thing you learned that was the most, holy cow moment?
I think because I view that as like heroism. I think he was a hero just doing that one little, I mean, I guess it was a big day of doing that. Because I don't think I ever viewed him as a hero. As far as I knew, he ate chicken on the Enterprise. Um, so I think that was it. It just like that blew my mind, and that he had never told any of his kids ever
That's
about it.
such a remarkable trait when you see a lot of these guys that
Yeah,
you would never. And he obviously passed away not telling people about this one thing, and you had to dig it up in a
yeah,
file to
yeah,
find out some of these heroic things that he did
yeah,
that he just was not going to
yeah.
call attention to.
And I was able to share it with my siblings too,
Yep.
because
That's
you
cool.
know,
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Amen. Amen. And so we're kind of kindred spirits there, Beth. When my grandfather, Phil Dion, died, he had 7 brothers and sisters, and they never really sat down. And my grandpa was different than yours in the sense that my grandpa would talk to anyone who listened about it, but no one would ask him about it except for
oh,
me. I was his oldest grandson, and I loved hearing him tell me these amazing stories. So when he passed away, his sons and daughters really, they were trying to put the obituary together, and they wanted to capture some of his experiences in World War II. And I had a chance to read it. It's like, this is all wrong. And I remember all of my aunts and uncles, his sons and daughters, felt really terrible about that. And I remember thinking, you know what? Everyone should be able to sit down and get a recording of some loved one that's been through a historical event. And that kind of got us launched on this trajectory as well. And I think it's really cool. The first 2 people that we've spoken with Gina and Beth, that you guys went out and did some research and said, I want to learn more about this. I want to figure this out. I want this to be part of our family heritage. So that's really cool that you guys did that.
And if it wasn't for you, there would be gaps, there would be holes. And so
Yep.
again, you should be honored as well as your relatives.
I couldn't agree more.
And I would jump in and say that, look, these documents were in a record somewhere. Some researcher down the road might have found it, but because you're blood relation and you knew him, you're going to be able to take that story and really perpetuate it even more or better than any researcher in the future is going to be able to do, because you knew the person, and and it's going to be passed on through the family and down. So I think that's a fantastic thing.
I have it's not a relative, but I have a World War II story that, I started the podcast in 2012. And of course that I don't know why I just did it, because there was not one there. But anyway, back in 1995, I was at James Madison University and I was a senior. I was getting a degree in history and a license to teach. And as one of my projects, I had to write a history paper. So it just happens that my neighbor was a B-17 pilot in World War II in Europe. And again, keep in mind, this is 1995. I have no idea that I'm going to do the podcast. I don't keep anything. I don't even remember his name, but I do remember one thing. I know that's horrible. You're sitting here talking about preserving records, and I chuck this thing as soon. Anyways, so I said, great, I'll interview you. So I'm at his kitchen table. We're sitting across from each other. And he's telling me about all his experiences, his near-death experiences. And he said there was one particular one, it was near the end, where the B-17, because of flak, it lost an engine. The engine was ripped out of the wing, and a part of the nose was ripped out because this flak came very close. And so he's got the wind in his face, but they're able to land. They're able to make it. Everybody's fine, besides some injuries. And sure enough, I go looking up, and of course, this is 1995. I have to go to, is it called microfiche, whatever? I have to go look that up, and I find the article. He was a Holtham hero. But anyway, so I write the paper and I do it, and it was really cool. But at the end of the interview, he said, I'd been on I'm trying to remember how many missions they had to fly. At first it was 25, and then it gets bumped to 30 or 30. I can't remember, but he was near the end. And he goes, on no other mission except for this one, when I saw that parts of my plane were missing that clearly were supposed to be there, I got a taste of silver in my mouth. When I was at my most afraid, I got a taste of silver. I've never had it in any other previous mission. He goes, and he kind of pauses dramatically because he's an older guy and they do that. And he goes, I've only had that silver taste in my mouth twice in my life. And I'm sitting there like, what was the second one? Whatever. And so he pauses just for dramatic effect. And he goes, the first one was that mission. And the second one was when I asked my wife to marry me.
Oh.
And she paused. And then she said yes. Yeah. So I'm sitting there going,
pause.
That's amazing. That's amazing. But the thing of the story is, she was sitting next to him next to the table. So I'm like a 20-whatever-year-old kid. I look at her and she just rolls her eyes. And but I don't remember his name. I just remember the taste of silver in his mouth, and he's only experienced twice. And one of them was, with all due respect, because of a woman. Women, you're killing us. Keep us strung out. But yeah, no.
What is that? What's that? What is that? Like adrenaline pumping?
It's a panic. It's like a panic attack.
Yeah, I did look it up later. There's a chemical process, a reaction, adrenaline, something I can't remember now. Again, this was a long time ago. But yeah, but the fact that he didn't have it on previous bomb runs, but it was that one because they came so close to death.
Oh my
and
gosh.
Then when he gets home, the love of his life pauses before she says yes. I think she was just messing with him. It was probably the best day of her life. She just messed. I don't know.
Let's unpack this a bit. So he had what amounted to a panic attack. It's common to get this coppery metallic taste in your mouth.
Right.
And because of maybe a near-death experience. And the only thing that equated to at the same level of anxiety was the pregnant pause when his future wife was trying to make a decision whether or not she's going to say yes or no.
Well, I figured his thinking was this, because this is what guys do. I'm going to ask her. She's going to say yes, and this is the rest of my life. It's going to be together. It's going to be awesome. I asked her. She didn't say anything, and that's when he's probably thinking his entire future is unraveling before his eyes.
She's like B-17 pilot. I'm going to make this guy squirm.
Right. Yeah, come on.
It's not going to be easy.
Super Fortress, at least. Come on, give me some. Anyway, so he was just a cool. I think he was from New Jersey or New York. I'm a Southerner. To me, they're all the same. But he had that accent. It was just cool talking to him.
I got some things for Len. He was the one I was going to poke at. And we got Paul on here. He's a fourth ID veteran. Thanks for joining us, Paul. But Len, so just set this up a little bit. Like I said, Len, for those who came in a little bit late, Len and I know each other from when I lived in Oklahoma. Great guy, call him Big Tex. And we're kind of working on a project right now. I don't know if he's going to talk about this or not, but it kind of shows the depth of his interests in all things. There you go. There's your Longhorns. All things World War II and veteran related. We have reached out to Myra Miller with Footsteps Research to look for war records. We're working together on doing that for a war dog, for a dog that his neighbor had years ago that may have been a combat dog. And I'm not saying, Len, that you need to talk about the war dog, because you've got also people in your family tree, human beings, not canines, that also served in World War II. But we're currently working on a project. When I sent that to Myra Miller, she digs up records from all kinds of crazy stuff all over the world. I said, I've got an interesting one for you. I'm not sure you've seen this before. She said, try me. And I sent her what Len sent me. And she's like, you're right. I've never seen this one before. So Len, I think I would like you to share some of the things that you shared with me in the past about some of your World War II heritage.
Well, I had two grandfathers, two great uncles, and a cousin, all in World War II. And then, of course, my neighbor Curtis had a dog that they volunteered for the War Dog program. And her name was Dottie, and Dottie was with we got her discharge papers. I texted them to you. I don't know if you have them.
I got them.
She was with the Coast Guard as a sentry dog. So they were either patrol, sentry, or there was one other classification of dogs. But Curtis told me that when she got back, that whenever a plane flew over, she would flatten out and not move. And also had a skin disease that could only been picked up in the South Pacific. So
wow,
that's what they knew of her, and I sent you her discharge papers. She had her tattoo in her lip, but she came back, to them, to the family. And so Curtis has passed away. His sister's still alive. And she said that when people would come over, that dog would escort them from one of the property to the other.
She was trained.
She was a mixed breed dog came out of a farm in Illinois. And that's how they got her. So, but yeah.
I didn't know that they would tattoo the inside of the dog's lip, but I guess they can't wear dog tags, or they can, but they might get lost.
They jingle.
They call them human
tags.
That.
Yeah, totally. They can't have that.
Yeah.
About when did Dottie pass away?
I never asked her that. I don't know how long Dottie lived. When it gave me an impression that she was with the family for a while after she got back. And she was lucky because they started euthanizing the dogs, and somebody stepped in and stopped that and had them bring them back. But from what I read, like 2% of the dogs were accepted that were volunteered, and it's something that, a person can understand why he's going away, but a dog doesn't, and so her family volunteered her to go to war.
Yeah.
Was it
amazing?
Army or?
No, Coast Guard sentry. That's all I know. Unfortunately, she wasn't with the Marines. The Marines had a book for all their dogs. The Army did not, and I don't know about the Coast Guard. It was kind of surprising. That was a kind of out of left field that she was in the Coast Guard. But since we know the Coast Guard was everywhere in World War II, who knows where she was stationed.
But the reason I ask is, you may not know when the dog passed away, but they had this dog decades ago. It was probably trained during the World War II era. Is that correct?
Oh yeah. Yeah, she was. Curtis said they went to the train station, and a guy got her, and they cratered her, and off she went to basic training.
Wow.
My
That's
gosh.
amazing.
And the other thing that you just mentioned briefly, but I'd like to have you share more widely because I thought it was fascinating about how the different services treated their dogs. You said something about the Marine Corps had a book for each
Yeah.
dog, and the Army didn't. Could you explain that more?
Well, from what I understand, and when I was researching it, the Marines wrote a history of their dogs, and they're included in the unit history. So they had their actions and stuff, and the other services did not. You know, the Army and the Coast Guard and I don't know if the Navy had dogs as well, but that's from what I understand. We were hoping that she was a Marine dog, but she was with the Coast Guard.
It's kind of a Marine dog. It's near water, right? He's doing Coast Guard stuff. So
Yeah.
You're either Marine or you're not. That's what my son
exactly.
tells me.
That's a good point, Ray. There's no kind of a Marine
No,
dog, right?
No. But I love the Marines all the more for doing that, for having those books.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and you also said you were talking about, I think you've done some research for someone in your family, a little more detail. I don't know if it was an uncle or a grandfather about something that they did. I thought it was an airman. I can't remember now.
So I have one great uncle on my mother's side that was in the Army Air Corps, and he was in with B-25s. When my grandmother passed away, we were going through stuff and found a paper clipping of Doolittle giving him and two other airmen decorations. Don't know what they were for. His unit did get the presidential unit citation. He was in a B-25 outfit. Now, I don't know. He was not a large man. So I don't know if he was ground crew on the airplanes, but I thought if he was, he would have been in a small place. So when I found this, I called him up and asked him if I could come talk to him, and he died 2 weeks later. And at the funeral, I asked his sons, did he ever say anything? They said no. He never talked about it.
There's a theme developing here.
Yeah.
They don't talk about it.
Yeah.
And then my on my dad's side of the family, Wayne Gardner, I know a little bit more about him, and I'd probably have your friend research this a little more. He was in a medical unit with the 80th, and he got 3 Purple Hearts and 3 Broad Stars.
Wow.
Damn.
Oh.
And I sent you the citation.
Yep.
I believe. Yeah.
You did. You did. And we're having Myra look into those individuals as well with whatever information we have. I think that's going to be a little bit easier than Dottie, but that was impressive, right? So, and I think Gina didn't
she say
Otis was in the 80th
80th
as well.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Mhm.
So now the 80th wasn't a Texas division. I think they were from mainly out of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, the Blue Ridge.
Yeah. And he was in Patton's Third Army. And my cousin said that he was with Patton in the Battle of the Bulge. And also one of his his first leaf cluster on his Bronze Star was in a town or a village called Verkitchen, which is about 20 clicks north of Dachau.
Oh,
Yeah.
gosh.
And she says there he did take pictures there, and if he was in a medical team, then they'd send him in, And
Awesome stuff.
again,
Wow.
never talked about it.
You
And
know,
he was a football coach, and I actually my high school team played against his team. And the very first time we did that, the coach wanted to see me outside. Done. It was my great uncle.
Oh yeah. I just wanted to jump in on this whole, this theme that we're covering of how these veterans from World War II, especially, did not talk
Hey,
about
Jennifer.
they did not talk about these events after they got back home. When Tony and I have talked about this at length, like Bill Parker, one of the guys that we've had on did a series on that landed at D-Day at Omaha Beach in the first wave. He got back from the war, and no one would, he kind of wanted to talk about it. He kind of needed to talk about the stuff he saw. His mom was like, that's between you and God to figure, and no one wanted to hear it.
Oh, wow.
Mainly because, and he's like, I don't know why that is. And he's like, it could have helped me a lot to talk about the things that I saw and went through. And he wrestled with PTSD up until close to the day he died, and we just kept kind of wondered, and I think back then there was a code of honor among that generation that you just don't you don't talk about yourself, Beth, like you mentioned, like you don't brag, and not that it would be perceived as bragging, but it would be perceived as maybe a weakness or so on. And people just didn't talk about that. What do you think, Ray?
Well, a character flaw is the way. I interviewed one gentleman who wrote, I can't remember the book, but basically, it wasn't, it was either bragging or just, if you feel the need to do that, then that says something about you. Ironically, you have people taking pictures of their breakfast and posting it all over the place. And here are these people who have done amazing things. Can I just one quick dog story? This was like 400 episodes ago. I interviewed a lady who did a book about animals of World War II, obviously patrol dogs, mules, horses. I think there was a pigeon and a cat. Anyways, Eisenhower went up to one of the dogs, and the dog it's a German Shepherd. Of course, it's sitting down there not moving because it's been told not to move. Until Ike put his hand on his head. No one but the trainer touches the dog. The dog bit Ike. And I jerked back, and the young man who's trained was like, I am so dead right now. And he's like, nope, you told me not to, and I did. That's on me, son. And he held up a bloody hand, and he walked away. But when she told me that, I'm like, it could have been the end of everything for you and that dog. But but they're trained, right? They're obedient. So that dog was. One of the things was no one's allowed to touch the dog except for the trainer, and someone else did. So the dog reacted accordingly.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, they're not a service dog, right? They're not gonna help people if they have a seizure.
Right.
They're not gonna you're not gonna have someone you can pet in a plane. These things are meant to like latch on to other human beings and drag them away. So
and don't touch them.
So Beth, you were gonna say something?
Oh, I was just going to say that in my dad's paperwork, he was released with $117 and some odd cents. And I looked it up because I thought, my God, because they were released in New York, actually, because the Biggie limped over to Bremerton, and then it kind of limped to San Francisco, and it went through the Panama area and some other place it stopped. And then it went over to Europe a couple of times back and forth to bring troops back over or possibly equipment. I'm not really sure. I couldn't really make sense of it. But then he was released in New York City. So he had to get all the way back across to Oregon. $117 is worth about $2,000 in today's money.
That's a small fortune back then.
Given $2,000.
It sounds like he won everybody else's gambling money. That's what it sounds like to me.
I don't know. He had this picture, and Mom made a memory box after he died, and it's him and one of his buddies, and I guess two other buddies, and they're sitting in a restaurant in New York. How they take little pictures of you, and you could buy them. And so he had that memento of him going out to dinner in New York before he got on that train.
Well, the other thing I liked is how you said the Enterprise kind of limped over here and limped over there.
Yeah.
There was no ship that had more battle stars than the Enterprise.
I believe it.
At all. I mean, I think it had over 20 battle stars. The next closest to it would have been like the Minneapolis and then USS New Orleans. Some of these cruisers, it had been torpedoed, it had been bombed, it had been kamikazed. In fact, the U.S. Navy really got raked over the coals in the 50s when they wanted to make it a museum ship because of its storied history. And the Navy said, we'd love to do it, but this thing is so bent and warped and woofed that it would cost us a fortune just to make it's just to have it do that. Now in 2026, people are like, we want to see the bent and warped and woofed. That's called battle damage. But back then, the Navy didn't see the point in making those repairs, and they ended up scrapping the most storied probably the most storied warship of World War II, and I don't think that's hyperbole.
Yeah,
Right.
I agree. Yeah.
One of the other battleships, I think it was a battleship, was that saw a lot of action was the New Jersey, and the slogan. I've got a gentleman who was in the Navy gave me. Here, I'll just show it to you. It's heavy. Oh my God! Shows that right there, and at the bottom of it, the slogan is "Firepower for Freedom." And I'm like, well, that pretty much sums up World War II, right?
Okay.
There. But,
So
yeah,
I got to jump in. I've got a USS New Jersey story, and it's not a World War II story, but it's a Vietnam story, but it's an epic story. So I went to lunch with Bill Parker and a few other veterans. Okay. And one of the guys there was a Vietnam vet, and his brother-in-law had been to Vietnam, and he was telling us, this guy was telling a story about his brother-in-law. His brother-in-law was, a scout. So he's out in the hill country out there, keeping an eye, looking out for enemy movement. Well, he sees this clearing down below, and he sees this group of Viet Cong or NVA that come out into this clearing. And the U.S. airstrikes had just left the area, and they didn't hit that area. And so he's on the phone, and he's calling. He's like, you guys need to get back here. There's a group out in the open, and you got to come back and take them out. And the fighter pilots call back and say, sorry, we've got to go back. We've got to get more ammunition, whatever. Couldn't do it. He's like, oh. Then a voice comes over the radio. This is the USS New Jersey. How can we help you? And he says, there is a group. He tells them the coordinates. There's a group of enemy soldiers out in this clearing right now. And he goes, and the guy goes, hold on a second. I'm going to put you on the intercom for the whole ship to hear. And so he puts him on the intercom, and they actually, I'm getting kind of choked up too, but they actually put his pipe through his commands and said, they're at these coordinates. He goes, I want these guys, the ship guy said, I want everybody on the ship to hear when they send these salvos out, what they're doing and where it's going and who it's going to help. And so they did it. And that thing just fired in all the huge projectiles
shells,
and just obliterated the area. And it was like, he's like, that was the most awe-inspiring thing he'd ever been a part of. And it's just so amazing.
Jeez.
I mean, when those 16-inch shells weighed a couple 1,000 pounds, and when they went off, it would suck the oxygen out of the air. I mean, it must have been it must have been medieval to have seen that thing get touched off. And imagine how the guys would have felt when, look, okay, people, we're all kindred spirits on here. Right. The guys that served in the military and served on these ships, they knew that these ships were from World War II. You're on the USS New Jersey in 1965. You knew it was a storage ship. And of course, these guys the officers, the captains of the Navy would do everything in their power to make sure that they knew you knew about what this thing did. Mm-hmm. And so it must have been really special for those guys to have heard that they were doing something that maybe their father or their grandfather did, 30 years ago.
Institutional pride.
My last relative is a cousin named Gardner, but his father was my great uncle, fought in the Spanish-American War in the Philippines. He stayed there. He was part of the Philippine constabulary, married a Filipino woman, and his son was Marvin Edward Gardner Jr. But he had a stage name of Eduardo de Castro. They called him the Valentino of the Philippines.
Good name.
And he directed. He was also a movie director, and he 3 of his films still exist.
Oh, wow.
Are you serious?
I'm serious.
Oh,
Eduardo de Castro, but his given name was Marvin Edward Gardner Jr. So he
sounds like a movie night for a Veterans Breakfast Club there, Shaun.
I'm not sure. This might not be safe for work, Ryan, if it's something that Len's relatives did, but please continue, Len.
Well, so he was they fought in the guerrilla movement when they were occupied by the Japanese. Unfortunately, he was captured.
Oh.
And he was not. I've got letters from his sister saying when he got out, he was not the same.
Yeah.
And he ended up drinking himself to death at the age of 54.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Dealing with all that.
Did you hear about the story about the Wisconsin during Korea?
Mm-mm.
A North Korean battery made the mistake of shooting at the Wisconsin. And they leveled all 9 16-inch shells at it. And the top of the hill disappeared. And somebody else in the battle group sent out the flag rating, temper, temper.
Awesome.
Okay, I hope I have this right, but it seems like I found Eduardo De Castro's picture.
Oh,
so he was an actor.
Yes,
yeah,
and a movie director.
Okay, it's very possible that they may be doing a documentary about him. Hold on here.
that'd be cool.
Oh, wow.
You know this
That's him?
picture. He's probably has his shirt
Yep,
off.
that's
Oh,
him.
look at the guy.
Oh, wow.
Smooth.
That's him?
Look at the picture on the right, man. No wonder he's the
Yeah.
Valentino, man.
Wow.
Look
Yeah.
at that. Woo!
There's
That
actually
was
like
his-
a movie
So
down
the
there.
woman he married, Florence Little, was an admiral's daughter, American admiral's daughter.
Good way to go. Good way to go.
Wow.
So is that the movie down there in the corner? It looks like.
It could be.
A clip
I've never
of it?
seen the movies.
That's cool. I think we're
Look
seeing
at
it
that.
now. Holy crap, Len. This is some history.
I'm in
Wow.
love.
Is it silent movie stuff? It looks like silent.
No,
movie
no,
almost.
no. It's in what is the native Tagalog?
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Native
It's
language.
Tagalog?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Here's my
Thanks, Sean.
dad and mom. I don't know if
Oh,
you
that's
can.
great.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
There we go.
Beauty pies.
That is awesome. And
The ruddy guy.
the ruddy complexion, which is how my grandfather's explained as well. There's some people on the line I'd like to see. I don't want to pressure you if you don't feel comfortable, but Paul, did you want to share anything from your family, some World War II history, or are you kind of just sitting back chilling?
As far as I know, I don't have any relatives whatsoever that served in World War II. I served, my dad served. So it's kind of where I'm at. I've always had a love or interest in World War II. So listening to Ray, Mr. Harris Jr.,
Yeah.
I told you about that when we were up at your place, but through Ray's podcast, I heard about your guys' podcast about 3 or 4 years ago, and just started listening to what you guys are doing. And then me and you met for lunch, and then I still listen to you guys when I'm at work, and I still listen to Ray. So it's Ray's fault that all this happened.
That's
I'm so
right.
sorry. If I could atone, I would.
You can't.
No.
Cat's out of the bag.
We're spoiled now.
Actually, Paul, if I can ask you a question, I've heard that my podcast is an excellent resource if you need to fall asleep. Is that? I hope that's not true for you.
Ray,
Oh God, I hope not, because I would have put it in ditch a long time ago.
yeah.
Okay, good. No, I'm glad someone was probably lying to me. Thank you.
Well, they say a good night's sleep is really important for our overall health and vitality, Ray. So you're
That's
doing
right.
the world a service in a
So-
multitude of ways.
Check out the History of World War II podcast.net. Yeah, if insomnia is your thing, I'm your solution. It's okay.
Actually,
Yeah,
Ray,
I-
there's no way I could sleep through your podcast. I'm like always like, oh my God.
Oh,
I have to find a map and listen to it
Ray
again.
story.
Yeah.
That's
Oh
right.
my gosh. The detail is amazing.
and Paul, please don't call me Mr. Harris. The name is Big Daddy Ray. I'm seeing if I can get that to catch on. I've been working on this for like 20 years now. So thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Steve Jordahl. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Steve Jordahl is a guy that has been a friend of our podcast for quite a while, because if he unmutes and he talks, you're going to love his velvety, silky voice.
Oh, yes.
Hey,
There
everybody.
he is.
Steve is a
Yeah.
radio broadcaster on the American Family Radio Network, and he does
Right.
the news broadcasts for them. And he's lent his talents to Tony and I to do some essentially milestone sorts of stories for us on like the end of World War II and D-Day and things like that. So thanks for coming on, Steve.
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan of both Tony and Ryan, your show, and also Ray. I love your. I'm so glad to finally meet you. And Tony, I've really never actually met you either, but I love both of what you guys do. Such a good resource. Big World War II fan, and yeah, I've been really privileged to be able to put together some audio expanded coverage of I think it was D-Day and the end of VJ Day.
Yep.
That's
I
right.
did some stuff there.
No, he was just doing us a favor, and he was doing this for us. So, but the stories and the research, he got some amazing audio clips that he dug up of the actual sound of the atomic bomb going off in Hiroshima. I mean, amazing stuff. So, he does a great job.
No, it's cool. It was really cool when I heard these. They're beautifully done. You do have that velvety Dan Patrick voice. And the other thing that was cool is you took clips from our interviews and told a story that was reinforced by these human beings who were there and expressed their thoughts on why and should the atom bomb have dropped and things like that. And
he needs to be on as a guest co-host on a series with us sometime. We'll
Anytime you need, I'll be there for you.
Okay,
for sure.
Well, how about Julie? Julie, I know that I know that you have, obviously you've set up Tony with the USS New Orleans Veterans Project, but then your father, I think, was it your father that also that you provided some material to us about him?
It started out years before I even knew Tony that I was trying to interview my dad. And as a daughter, I probably didn't know the right questions to ask. Mostly, where were you then? What did you do? And he wasn't real forthcoming about stuff until finally got Tony involved in all of that. And there were some pretty funny stories about World War II. Unlike Gina, my dad did come home, and he stayed in for 22 years in the Navy because he absolutely loved it. One of the stories that he tells about World War II on the New Orleans is that he was a hospital corpsman. And so he had control of the room where they did the surgery and stuff, and he would rent that out to some of the guys that wanted to play poker because they wouldn't get caught in there.
He's an entrepreneur. All right.
He was an entrepreneur, yeah. And I mean, he had some pretty interesting stories also as being a hospital corpsman. They had to perform surgery on a crewman that had an intestinal blockage, and the ship's doing a lot of rolling right now. And I remember my dad saying that he had to put his arms around the intestines so they wouldn't fall on the floor.
Oh, gosh.
As they were doing the surgery. And I think he was always sure that the U.S. was going to win. There was no doubt in his mind whatsoever.
Yep.
Some of the funny things that he'd say, you'd hear a bomb coming in, and you hear it whistling, and he'd run to the other side of the ship. Like that's going to save him.
That's what I'd do. Yeah.
Jump in the water. I'm getting out of here.
Yeah. But he said he was only scared one time during entire time he served on the New Orleans, and that was during Halsey's typhoon.
Oh.
And he remembered going up to the bridge, and the front of the ship going down, and the waves were higher than the ship in front of them. So that was the only time that again he was afraid. But he absolutely loved the Navy. Again, stayed in for many years, had a really good career, and he was definitely my hero.
And Julie, some questions I've never had a chance to ask you. How old were you when you started to kind of appreciate that, hey, my dad was in this big momentous thing and I kind of want to learn more about it?
I think just about my entire life, I was always interested in the history and the Navy. I mean, the Navy was such a big part of our family. I remember when we were living in Connecticut and the parades, and I loved all men in uniform.
Nice.
That's why we wear them.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. There's the hat. Thanks, Rhino.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but hey, my dad was in his 80s, and I wanted to know what he had gone through because he wasn't a big talker about it. He was not a bragger. He never bragged. But I wanted to know what he had been through. And he was a funny guy too. So,
Yes.
and it was hard to drag it out of him, but we were always interested in the history
Did
part of
did
World
the
War II.
did the interview that we conducted with your father, did it unveil some things you did not know?
Yeah, there was a few things that, of course, I had tried to interview him and ask questions. Yes, I didn't realize how much he loved the Navy until then, and how much, what a great time he had during all of it. But a lot of the stuff with the medical stuff that he had gone through after the war and radioisotope school and being chosen to be on the nuclear submarines and second in his class. I didn't know that. Some of the stuff like that. And I think right after World War II also, he was on maybe Tony, you remember this, but he was on a ship that delivered alcohol.
Yeah. We did a special on that. Julie's not making this up. So it's after World War II. Her father, Charles Berglund, is still in the military. He's a fairly well-placed non-com at this point, still doing the work, in the medical side. And they basically were these ships, the fleet was cruising around the Mediterranean post-war, almost like on a victory lap. Like, who's going to stop us? And they were rolling in some of the most beautiful ports of call that you can imagine. And he said something. Julie's dad said something that I had to do research on because I didn't think I heard it right. That they literally had an officer on the ship whose sole job was to go to these ports of call and harvest the proper wine and food for the parties they're going to have on the ship later. His budget was to buy alcohol, and not any alcohol. This person was like almost a sommelier, right? Like a wine connoisseur. And I looked this up. I'm like, was this really a position in the U.S. Navy? And it was. They literally had people whose rating as an officer was to provide the sort of things that you have on a ship when you have heads of state and whatnot visiting the ships.
Procurement officer, right?
It had a fancier name than that. So yeah, Julie, I was blown away when I heard that.
Yeah.
The other thing that I remember, Julie, is your dad after the war worked in nuclear medicine to find peaceful applications for the atom bomb we built.
Yeah.
And what he told me, and I wish I had a chance to unpack it when I was interviewing him, was he ended up working on some nuclear medicine didn't he say that it was applied or used for your mom and it saved her life? Is that correct?
No, it wasn't my mom. It was for an admiral's wife.
That's what it was.
Wow.
Hey, even better.
Yeah.
I don't know about that, but
So it's a good move.
So he basically they developed a form of radiation therapy that ended up saving someone's life. You're right. It was the admiral's wife that he spoke of.
Yes. Yes. I think one thing that really stood out that I did not know until you interviewed him was when he was on the submarines, he was still in the medical field and they did not have doctors on the submarines. He was the doctor.
Yep.
And there was another crewman and he had a stroke, I believe is what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not realize this, but the guy that's in charge of medical can override the commander. And so they had to stop the mission. Wow. And they had to have a helicopter come and pick up this guy and bring him back to San Diego. Yeah. And I remember my dad saying when they got back there, he was there to greet them. He survived.
A lot of authority.
Shaun's got him right there. So this would have been circa 2004-ish, I believe, in Washington, D.C. Is that right, Julie?
When 2007.
2007. Thank you. And here's a screen capture from
I love
YouTube.
my face in that screen capture there.
Like,
perfect. That's how I always look. So
to me, that's how Ryan always. Whenever you say anything to him, that's his go-to response.
Right. So the thing I remember also about your dad, he was in his 80s when I interviewed him.
Yeah.
Head full of white hair, crystal blue eyes, just sharp as a tack. I hope I can age like that, but I'll probably be walking around trying to figure out how to put my socks on when I'm 60. So
Yeah, I kind of doubt
If
that.
there's any justice, yes. Yeah.
you're not wrong, Ray. I wish I could push back on that, but
No. Can I just say something real quick? Because so as we've been going along, everybody's been going, oh, and he didn't like to talk about it. That reminded me of, and I should have wrote his name down. I did not. There was a GI who landed on Omaha Beach, and the one thing I remember him saying in his interview, it was like a long interview, but the one sentence that I remember is he goes, as far as telling of what happened to him, he goes, it ain't hard to remember, it's hard to tell. So again, it either goes back to
That's a good point.
don't show off, or just because if I tell you, then I have to rethink it or think of it again, and
Relive it.
I don't want to do that. Yeah. So again,
That's a good point.
so there could be multiple reasons, but again, it's just a class act to go, yeah, I did what I had to do and I got on with my life. Things have changed a bit since then.
Yeah, they certainly have. Shaun, our moderator, you are heavily involved in working with veterans for the Veterans Breakfast Club. You guys have this really, well-attended virtual session every Monday, I think at 7:00 Eastern time, and other things. What got you involved in working with these veterans? You're kind of a young little whippersnapper.
Yeah, I'm what you call the young guy in the room.
Yeah.
We asked a question to to expand on that. We asked a question in the last room. We had 170 vets join us at Christ United Methodist here in Pittsburgh on Wednesday, this past week. And we started walking around. We were like, "What age would you consider elderly?" And we were having a room full of 50 to 101, and we figured the average age was around 80. Was when you consider yourself elderly at 80. And somebody asked me, and I was like, "I used to think 80," and then I started hanging out with 101 World War II vets, and I was like, "I think it goes up a little bit higher." I actually came from a background in theater and performance art, and got into the nonprofit world and did about 10 years working at a theater. And during that time, we ended up doing the show A Few Good Men. There's a stage production of that we produced, and my job at that time was sort of outreach, and they asked me to go check out the veteran space in Pittsburgh here. So I started doing some research and looking into it, and I found the Veterans Breakfast Club. I attended a breakfast and couldn't stop. I couldn't stop going. It was an incredible program of storytelling. Our whole mission is getting veterans together to share stories of their service, to connect, educate, heal, and inspire. It's been around since 2008. Todd DePastino is the executive director. He wrote the Bill Maudlin memoir. If you look it up on Amazon, he he just went around and started talking to World War II vets. There were a lot more back then when he wrote the book, and they loved it so much they just kept getting together, which sort of grew into the VBC. At the turn of the pandemic, I had a little baby, and it was kind of time to move out of the theater space. There was a bit too much of my time would have been taken up at that job. And I approached Todd and I just said, "I really love what you're doing. I love the mission. Do you have a job?" And he said, "Actually, I do." So the stars aligned. I'd always had a passion for veteran stories, and I just, with that storytelling background, it just seemed like a perfect fit. And now we do Monday nights at 7 p.m. on Zoom. Thursday nights is our World War II specific Greatest Generation live program. We do that at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Our website's veteransbreakfastclub.org. We have a blog. We have a free quarterly magazine we put out with tons of veteran stories on there. And we do our in-person breakfast both in Eastern Ohio, around Pittsburgh region. We have one tomorrow morning up in Warrendale if you're in the area. And then we have sort of Eastern, like Philadelphia area. But this year we made all of our breakfast free. We just want to actually, hold the doors open for any and all. And that's not just veterans that get the free breakfast. Everybody does. I'm not a veteran. Todd's not a veteran. Our host for Thursday night, Glenn, he's not a veteran. We're just passionate about veteran stories. We want to make sure to get the platform out there and get a place for people to be able to tell these stories.
Man, that's how you do it. I mean, you guys are you're knocking it out of the park in every direction, and it's so awesome because you're a 501c3, isn't that right?
That's right. Yeah.
That's such a great use of that designation, because you guys are just doing such great stuff. And just my hats off to you. And we want to thank Todd also for giving you up for a few hours. And
I'll send
letting
bills in the mail.
okay, good. That's cool. We really appreciate that. And
oh no, I appreciate what
awesome
you guys
stuff.
are doing. Like, we firmly believe that the rising waters raise all ships, and we just appreciated since we found out about Warrior Next Door, found out about Ray here. There's no shortage of veteran stories, and the more people that we can get on platforms such as this, such as Ray's podcast, to tell their story, to get out there. Not only that, not only just to tell their story, but I think it makes other veterans feel comfortable in telling their story. And how many times that we've held a breakfast and somebody stood up and told a story out of nowhere, and the family sitting there like, we've never heard any of this. Like, where did this come from? And it's just that they sit in a room and they feel comfortable. They're with their people. They're with their tribe. They just stand up and start telling a story, and that's just it. It takes a lot of curiosity, and it takes passion, and it takes listening to just sit down and say, hey, I'd like to hear about what happened to you in the Navy. Tell me about it.
Can I just say, Shaun, I'm in Virginia, so I would love to come to one of those. But honestly, you had me at free breakfast.
Absolutely.
That's what I thought Ryan was going to say was, that's genius. You knocked
How do
out
you
the
do
park
that?
with free food.
Yeah. Who can turn down free breakfast? I mean, come on.
I can't.
Yeah.
I started jumping in when Masters of the Air was being televised on, I think, on Apple. And you guys had like Donald Miller and Lucky Luckadoo on, and you guys were gracious enough to share those contacts with us so that we could have them on our podcast. Just another quick question, maybe some of the people on the phone call might be interested in this. Out of all the people that have come across to be interviewed, that you've had a chance to facilitate, to be their handler, to get them available to other people, which like one or two people from the World War II era, did you have in your show that you just pinched yourself like, this person is here right now with us?
Yeah. I mean, Lucky Luckadoo was certainly a find.
Yeah.
And we've had several of those guys from the Army Air Corps join us. Right now we have sort of a national treasure here in Pittsburgh. His name's Warren Goss, and he's 102 Utah Beach. He was part of like pre-wave. Like there's archival footage of him like out in the bush, sort of scoping things out. And he made it all the way through the war, and he comes to a lot of our breakfasts, and just a joy to talk to. Warren Goss, look him up. He just came back from another trip to D-Day, as they send them there every year to sort of honor those guys. So if you guys want to talk to Warren, I'm sure he'd be happy to chat with you guys. He's done tons of interviews. But yeah, we started that Greatest Generation Live program Thursday nights with sort of mirroring Masters of the Air. We kind of said, hey, let's start our own thing. And that was sort of like, oh, we'll review the episodes. But then it sort of sprouted into like, well, let's just keep doing this, because Glenn, our host for that, is a big World War II historian, has read like every book imaginable. And he just keeps finding these authors and these veterans that keep coming on the program. So,
yeah. Well, we'd want to talk to him. So that's a yes. If he's available, I'm not going to. Yeah. There's no point waiting until after the show to tell you that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Warren's an incredible
totally.
guy. He's a gruff old dude, and just like, you sit down with him and he's just like, yeah, okay. Farmer, he grew up on the farm, and just like we just asked him at the last breakfast, we said, how did you keep yourself alive? He's like, I didn't listen to what I was told. I figured that'd get me killed.
Yeah.
So he just
wise man.
Yeah. Tons of stories from him.
So we didn't call on Troy. And I do know that Troy Johnson, Tony and I know him very well. He did an interview of a veteran, I think it was his uncle or great uncle, that there's Troy right there. He just got done eating cheesesteaks. He was grilling out earlier.
Yeah,
now
he looks fuller now.
He does look fuller.
Yeah.
A little bloated, I think.
Pictures of my breakfast online. Sorry.
So anyway, briefly tell us about your story that you did where you interviewed your relative. Was he your uncle or your great uncle?
It was my Uncle Dean. He lives in Topeka, Kansas. I think he was in the U.S. Army from 1954 to 1957, I believe. And excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. But he wasn't active duty. He wasn't in Korea or anything, dangerous, if you want to call it. He did some maneuvers across the U.S. And I'd love to do a special for Next Door at some point. We'll talk about that this weekend,
Yeah.
Ryan.
Yeah.
But he did get to witness. He was at what's the atomic testing range in Nevada?
The White Sands.
I can't think of the name of it.
The
White.
White
That wasn't
Sands.
White Sands.
Trinity.
White Sands in the.
That's in New
It
Mexico.
wasn't there. It was in Nevada, just north of Las Vegas.
Oh,
But
okay.
he
I know what you're
witnessed
talking about. Yep.
like 7 atomic bombs, including the largest in the U.S. And just some of the, just the way he explained it. Yeah, I know it impacted his life. For forever seeing something that powerful. He said they would close their eyes and put their hands in front of their face, and you could still see the bones through his hands. So
With his eyes
it's
closed.
just stories.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
My
with his eyes
goodness.
closed, and yeah, I think it's just stories like that and I appreciate hearing Beth and Gina. Your stories are amazing. This was really done really well. Um, it's things like that that just give you a better perspective on life, and you don't take things for granted. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, I just my hat's off to Troy, because after he started listening to us, he decided he wanted to do an interview and submit it to the Library of Congress. And
cool.
he's our kind of inaugural guy that we finally got through to and corrupted him and made him start going out and doing this stuff. So I hats off to you, Troy, for having the fortitude to go out and do that. It's not easy to do. It's a lot of work, to have to send it in and do the paperwork and everything. And your son Luke, as I understand it, he's gotten pretty interested in this too, right?
I would say that. I would say our only. I don't want to. Yeah, I didn't want to butt in, but if you bring it up, I think one of the biggest moments of his life so far. He's turning 18 tomorrow. Was meeting Bill Parker through you guys, and right before Bill passed. For him, that was a kind of a momentous thing.
Oh, very
and
cool.
a very meaningful thing for him. So he'll always remember that. When you meet someone who's a real hero, that's a big deal. So
there's an episode we did. It was like our 100th. It was like I forget which one, like our 100th episode.
Yeah.
And Troy reached out to me and goes, "Hey, what would you think if Luke and I interviewed you and Tony and did like a little episode on, what got you guys interested and all that stuff?"
You can't see it.
What are you doing, Tony?
I've actually got the interview questions right here. Please continue,
Yeah.
Ryan.
Anyway, so that's out there in our back catalog if you want to hear it like that. But him and Luke asked some pretty good questions. It was a lot of fun. So
that was more fun for us, I think, than for anyone else. But yeah.
Real quick, Jake, did you have your hand up?
I did. So my grandfather, he fought in World War II, Pacific Theater. He was in like a Dauntless Avenger. He was a tail gunner.
Oh.
He died before he died when he was like 43 years old. I never knew him. I know he was involved in a lot of in engagements. What would be the first place for me to start to get any military engagement history, or what would be the best place to start?
If you go to our website, thewarriornextdoor.com, on our main page, scroll down past all the people that we've interviewed that you can listen to. There is a live link for Myra Miller, and she does not charge an arm and a leg. It's very affordable. And she will do all the legwork, and you will get information that she will find that would be very difficult for you to do on your own. People like Gina, really dug into things and was able to find it. I'm not sure Myra would help Gina much because it sounds like
she had
she's
already
got a lot
found
of
stuff. She'd already
Exactly.
covered almost 95% of everything.
But for
there was to
people like
find.
us who don't all know all the nooks and crannies, you click on that link and reach out to her, and she'll do a free look just to make sure the records are there. And if you like what she found for a nominal amount, she'll harvest them and mail them to you.
And that's the thing that's really cool. Myra lives in St. Louis, right by the record center, the military record center that caught fire in the early 70s. And she was telling us that, everyone thinks all the Army records got burned up. Well, they didn't. And then after that fire, all of the other branches of the military's records were brought there and are stored there. So it's just the Army that lost a portion of their records, not the rest of the military. And they're all in St. Louis there. So she goes in there every day and researches, and she knows how to dig through everything and go through the stacks and stuff. So she can pull out stuff that's not online.
Hey, Jake, I was going to ask too. Do you know the division that he was in? Your grandfather?
I don't know. I
Okay.
do not know. It's like kind of what you guys were all saying. Like the whole time tonight was from my mom. She always said that he never talked about it.
Almost every division has an association website. And that's where I started too, was the 80th Division Association website. And it is like a horde of resources on there too. So if you could find out and then start with his division's association's website. And by the way, I'm going to the 80th Division Association reunion in Virginia.
Hey,
in
cool.
August. So I'm getting involved in that whole division association too. So they're a wealth of information too.
Oh, that's
Fantastic stuff. Good. Thank you, Gina.
I appreciate all the knowledge and the background. Very, very interesting.
Thanks, Jake. Glad you could join us. And Beth, I think you were able to get some records as well, right?
Mhm.
Was that a difficult process for you?
Directly. It really wasn't. I gathered more information than I needed because I didn't know that, the time lapse. There was enough time lapse that they just give them to anybody. I thought I had to prove my connection to my dad, so I had just done all that, and then they sent this very polite note: "Here you go," but you really didn't need to.
Next time, you don't need it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the last one to speak, whatever, but I want to show you something that a friend gave me. So I don't know if you can see this, but there's 2 wooden dowels.
Oh yeah.
Right there, and and what it is this is from the Missouri, where they signed the article, the instrument of surrender. And what it is in the 1980s, the Missouri, it was had a makeover, if I can use that, and they cut some of the teak deck out, and there's 2 of the.
Wow.
But I'll just read this real quick because it pretty much sums up. Over this spot on 2nd September 1945, the instrument of formal surrender of Japan to the Allied powers was signed, thus bringing a close to the Second World War. The ship at the time was at anchor in Tokyo Bay. So again, I just thought that might be fitting to do at the end. And this is really heavy. Here's from the Missouri as well.
Oh, very cool. Where did you get this stuff?
Well, mostly legal. I play pool every Friday night with 2 gentlemen. One of them, Jim, was in the Navy, and he was supplies and things like that. And he got his hands on things if you asked for it. Anyways, he has a whole bag of the stuff, and he goes, "Here, you want that?" I'm like, yes, I do. So anyways, I just wanted to share that with you, that a little piece of, at the end, since we're at the end of the show, a little piece of the end of the war.
All right.
Awesome.
Very
good.
And thank you for everybody. Thank you for Tim, Shaun, everybody who came on. Really appreciate you guys coming on.
All right. Thanks everyone for giving us a little piece of your evening.
Yes, a big piece.
It's a big piece of your evening. Thanks for the emails. Thanks for sharing your stories with us. And now we're going to share them with other people if you guys are okay with that. So thank you very much.
All right.
Keep at it. Everybody keep researching. Good stuff.
Amen. All right.
Take
Take
care.
care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.